Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Minutes to Merknight event, in which the Merknight is added to the game. So, of course, as of lately, Monday videos have not been coming out on time, but no worries, they should be back to normal now. But we'll also have some videos going up kind of summarizing the previous two, because of course we do cover it every week, and I did actually get overviews of them done. They'll be posted a little bit after this weekly event video, as this one's relevant to right now. But as far as this new trip, Merc Knight, this thing is relatively useless. Comes with a blue-brown. As far as the actual troop itself, it is not going to be used much. It has an exploded gem, which gives it a little bit of board control. Does that for 12 mana cost, kind of similar to some of the golems. And then it gains a bunch of life, boosted by blue gems destroyed at a 2x boost ratio. So if you get something like 4 blues destroyed, you would end up getting 8 additional life onto him on top of the amount that it's already doing. Then it gets to submerge and barrier itself. So it's a little bit tanky in that regard, but it only has 25% score reduction, has a bit of a blue link, and doesn't really have much else going for it. You'd get much better value out of using something like a Corvash, which also has a similar amount of score reduction, but is overall just way more useful. And overall, just not really going to be worth it compared to just slotting a Mountain Crusher there or something off a hero. I really don't see any instance where this is going to be used. He's also for 2x Trade Stones this week, which is also pretty useless to ever bother doing, since it only works in PvP, and it's better rate just to go and farm Explore for your Trade Stones. So he's going to be pretty much useless in every possible capacity, other than if you want to go farm up a bunch of brown-blue arcanes. So kind of something that you can ignore other than just getting it for upgrading purposes for Kingdom Stars. One thing that does become possible as of this week is a 12-star Merlantis. We end up getting two 13-star kingdoms last week, and we get another 13-star kingdom this week. Currently, it can only reach 12-star. However, we have a Bounty Hunter event happening this Friday that will bring it up to 13. Speaking of things coming out soon, we should hopefully be getting a version 4.75 patch soon, TM. Could even be tomorrow or tonight. You never know. No official date has been given, but it is very soon. As far as stuff this week, we do have 10% to all merfolk, as well as 10% to all Merlantis. This in combination is almost 20% for the entire kingdom. This is also pretty beneficial, as the weekly invasion will end up using these troops, as well as the Thursday class event, since it's going to be for the Tidecaller class. So both of these are going to be very, very useful this week. Generally, you don't really use too many merfolks with your team, but a lot of the event-related stuff does get to utilize it, and it'll make it a little bit easier. Other than that, as I mentioned earlier, you do get 2x Trade Stones if you end up using a Merc Knight. This isn't really going to ever be useful because it only works in PvP and not Explore, so you're better off just grinding out Explore. Other than that, one thing that isn't up here yet, Lunar New Year is this week. I forget the exact date that it falls on. However, starting this Friday, which might actually be Lunar New Year's, I'm not 100% sure. But starting this Friday, we're going to be getting a Battle Crasher for a couple days. We'll have some kind of resource, maybe like Glory or something. And for those few days, we'll be able to go get additional loot constantly everywhere from every single battle that we end up doing. If there's a Battle Crasher there, you just get slightly extra loot, and it does not overwrite the gnomes. So basically, just an easy way to just get more loot per battle. It's not as good as a Vault event, obviously, but still adds up to be a decent amount of extra resources. And if we end up getting new patch sometime this week, they're probably going to have a special adventure board later this week where they'll replace out one of the leftmost tasks with a different task related to whatever the holiday is. So Lunar New Year's is the most recent one if they end up getting that up in time, the patch, and if they don't end up doing it for Lunar New Year's, Valentine's Day will probably be the one that they do it for. And basically it's a new feature coming next patch. It isn't really that big, it's obviously a mini patch that will end up replacing out the leftmost adventure board task that you have for that day or those few days, and it will end up replacing it with something completely unique. What exactly it'll be, who knows, but it'll be something, and it'll probably be pretty decent loot. And assuming that it does work as they mentioned, and it replacing the leftmost one, this is pretty good because the leftmost one is the lowest rarity one, whereas of course it goes from lowest to highest. So if it does always do the leftmost ones, it's normally going to replace a common or rare task on most given days, so it's not really going to be taking away any loot. So that's going to be pretty cool. But anyways, that's going to be that when it ends up coming, if it does end up coming this week. Other things, event key drop table. So, of course, as every week, we have a different event key drop table. In this case, we have Merlantis. I believe I already have it saved up here. Good. Every single troop that you see here, if you go click onto Merlantis and click show all if you don't already own all of them, will bring up every single troop that is available for this kingdom. In event key drop table, you can find every single one of these troops except for the 4 that you end up getting from the Sea of Sorrows. Any of them that are marked with Sea of Sorrows and Merlantis, you'll have to go get from the Sea of Sorrows faction in the underworld by opening portals there. However, everything else from this faction or from this kingdom can be obtained through the event keys. As far as event keys are concerned, I'd probably skip on it. There is one decent drop that you could end up getting. and that is Aquaticus. It's kind of like Infernus, except it has a higher damage output, except its explosion can be hard countered. It also doesn't have a blue storm, whereas Infernus has a firestorm to his main, or a red storm to his main color. But it does have 4x Submerge. Of course, we did get a pretty hard counter to that the other week that has a instant kill onto Submerges. However, it's very rarely going to be used, and you could still probably get away with using this for the 4x Submerge whenever you want to. Unfortunately, it does not count as a merfolk, so do be mindful of that, so you can't actually use it for a lot of these merfolk events, like the Invasions or the Thursday event. However, it is a pretty good elemental, and synergizes pretty well into future elemental teams, as well as current elemental teams. Do keep in mind the chance for that's really low, and there are 2 mythics currently in this kingdom, Aquaticus and Undyne. Undyne being almost near useless, and Aquaticus being pretty much the only good drop from this kingdom. There's a few other things that you might be able to pick up more copies of, like Azura, get a copy of Nimue if you don't already have a single copy. But overall, this is probably a event key drop table worth skipping, unless you're specifically going to get these upgraded just to go get 10-star Merlantis. I wouldn't really go and bother upgrading anything here, and it's just a good day to go, or a good week to go and just save your keys and wait for a better event to come around to spend your keys on. Other than that, as far as guild-related events, we have Invasions. I'll be showing 2 teams for this. One is the Earth's Fury team, and the other one I'll just copy-paste over for the other thing, which is the Mang team. Basically the same thing, but saved in a way that's for Mang, for people that don't have Earth's Fury. Earth's Fury is an old event weapon. You won't be able to get it again until we finally have another Groshnock event, which off the top of my head, I'm not sure when the next one is. But it's basically like Mang, except it distributes all of the attack among all of your allies. So you'll be able to go and get a nice distribution of the attack gain. So we'll just go take our skull, and pretty easy to just clear it all out. And you can use the Earth's Fury to boost up your attack by armor tearing it. Has a 3-to-1 boost ratio that gives attack to all allies. Basically Mang, but distributed instead of all in one troop. And this helps feed your first slot, especially if you have it mythic, since you get a 5x ratio on it, which means you're going to gain more benefit than a Mang would, since you're feeding it attack, but that attack that you end up gaining on a 3-to-1 boost ratio is giving it 5x damage, meaning it's gaining 1.66 the value of a Mang. By simply feeding it with Earth's Fury, not to mention if it happens to die, for whatever reason, everything else on your team would also get that attack. Of course, they wouldn't be able to utilize it as much because they don't have 5x the damage, but they'd still be able to utilize it to some capacity. So, yeah, going to be pretty easy, I would say, for the most part. The actual troop itself doesn't really get much of a benefit, though. It just ends up doing boost ratio based on Submerge. And you can never get boost ratio off yourself for Submerge, so the most you can even get is 3, which is 12, which is 12 times 5, 60 additional damage. 60 is the absolute max you'd be able to get as additional damage, which is obviously pretty low and a pretty lame special effect. It also has spell reduction, which isn't as good as skull reduction, given that you normally want to use the invasion troop into first slot. Other than that, we did end up getting a new weapon, of course, too. The weapon's right over here. It is deal damage to an enemy. It's really similar to all the other double converts based on the typing. Or not double converts, but double gem creation. It's basically a merfolk bonus one, which ends up synergizing pretty well with both the 2 events, since both events are related to merfolk this week. Then it ends up creating a mix of 6 blue and brown, and that's boost ratioed, of course, by the amount of merfolk on your team. So it's going to be okay. It's a red-yellow. It feeds blue-brown. Obviously, merfolks use a pretty heavy amount of blue-brown, and if I'm not mistaken, they don't use too many reds. So it'll be able to fill that hole a little bit. And overall, should be an okay weapon. It's not going to be meta for anything that I'm aware of. But into the future, as we get more options, it could potentially be decent with other various merfolk related teams. But that's what that is for now. Definitely worth getting just to have. However, I wouldn't really be using it much. Other than that, as far as other things going on this week, we have a lot. This Tuesday, Fang Moor, nothing really too special with that. Though do keep in mind that the next faction that comes out will be for +1 magic, and you need a lot of kingdoms maxed out for that. And if you're in like super endgame and you're actually at the point of getting 2,500 factions and you have a lot of them done, you might want to calculate out how many more points you might need by the time 1 month from now gets around, because you might be able to get +1 magic immediately. So do be wary of that as far as your total renown. However, if you're not near 40,000 renown right now, you probably don't need to worry about that. But if you are around 40,000 renown or so, you might want to consider doing a lot of the faction events to the 2,500s of the ones you haven't already done for the next month, because you might be able to get +1 magic immediately. That's not too big a deal, because you could just wait 2 months and get the +1 magic a lot easier. You just wouldn't be able to get it a bit earlier. Other than that, this Wednesday we're getting a new pet. It's fully cosmetic. It is the Year of the Rat for this year. for the Lunar New Year's, and we're going to be getting that pet in on this Wednesday. I believe Lunar New Year's is a little bit later than that, but we're getting the pet on Wednesday because, of course, it's a Wednesday event. It's fully cosmetic, but it's a cute little rat that you'll be able to have on your shoulder. Thursday, we have Merlantis class. Merlantis class not really ran for much. Frost Mage is normally ran instead of it, particularly in Guild War situations. However, there are some really niche, particularly blue-oriented teams, like 4x blue, that you may possibly use for Tower of Doom and Guild Wars, either offensively or defensively, that occasionally get used with this hero class. However, I would just advise getting Frost Mage up instead, as Frost Mage is used like 90 to 95% of the time compared to Tidecaller, so you probably don't really need to worry too much about this class, but if you want to go level it, you can, and if nothing else, it might help you out with the class event, as one interesting thing about Tidecaller this week, due to its typing, it does have 20% additional stats this week, so at least in that regard, it is decent. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a new turtle that's going to be coming in through Bounty Hunter this Friday. It's basically going to be like an apothecary, except for a higher mana cost. Outside of outside of Bounty Hunter, it's going to be weaker than apothecary because it doesn't have cleanse, it has a higher mana cost, and just overall isn't going to be as good in most situations. However, it does have barrier on it, which is kind of interesting. For 12 mana, it gets to convert to brown of a chosen color, anything you want, as well as barrier. So be interesting to see how that pans out. This is also the first traditional conversion troop that has ever been added to Bounty, which in itself is pretty strong, since if you ever have any good brown option that you want to go use for a Bounty, they'll be able to go really quick, since you could just use the turtle, feed it mana, and then boom, you just got your whatever mythic or whatever really good weapon up to full mana, and then you just kill out the entire enemy team with it. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. Plus, it's 50% score reduction, so that's always good. Nice little tanky troop that you can put right in first slot, which makes sense as is a turtle. But yeah, it should be a pretty interesting Bounty Hunter with that addition, as well as every future Bounty Hunter that will be able to go and utilize that now. Other than that, Soulforge. I actually forgot to check this earlier. Let's see, what do we have here? Oh, High King Irongut. We were just mentioning this on stream, that he's probably coming in the next 3 weeks. And by probably coming, we mean guaranteed coming, because we were doing the math on it as to what was still left. And there was 12 mythics left, I believe. And this was one of them that still didn't come in rotation, so he's bound to come in the next 3 weeks. And apparently he came the first week of those 3 weeks. And yeah, High King Irongut. Honestly, I would say he is the most valuable mythic craft in the game. He's becoming slightly less viable, though, I would say. Not that he's becoming less viable, he's still just as viable. But I feel like other options are starting to become usable compared to High King Irongut. But nonetheless, he's still one of the best troops, if not the best troop in the entire game for upscaling higher level content. Main reason for this is he has automatic extra turn and a Devour that is based on his attack. After a single Devour or with a lot of attack buffs, you can get his attack to 100. And anything above 100 on his attack is a 100% chance to Devour. And if you are need to Devour things that have immune to Devour, you can either transform them, you can curse them, or if they don't have immune to stun, you can stun them. Normally the method to go is to curse them, since it tends to be the easiest. Use something like a Mirage Queen or any other like a Vashtagan or something to go and place a curse on them, and then you can go and just simply Devour, and even if their entire team is immune, you can just Devour. It doesn't work against Indestructible, so it's really bad for something like a Tower event for invasions right now, or not like you can even use it, but if you ever could, as well as pretty much any kind of game mode where you would end up having to deal with something that has a Indestructible, like for example Tower of Doom. Well, you could still use it for Tower of Doom. The final battle, or the final Doom that's on the final battle of each floor, has Indestructible, meaning that you won't be able to Devour it, though you could still utilize your attack value to kill it nonetheless. But yeah, overall, pretty great troop. Gets really high stats, works insanely good regardless of the enemy stats. They could be all 1,000 stats, and they'll still be just as good as if they were all 200 stats. So really good at upscaling, and if you don't currently have a viable upscaling method for doing things, mostly delves, but pretty much anything in the game, you can just go get yourself an Irongut, and you're pretty much going to be set. Obviously, your attack will be a little bit lower earlier on in the game, but one way to kind of obfuscate that some is, of course, Arachnian tokens. If you go and get all 3 of them, 3 medals, you'll end up getting 12 additional attack, and that's a pretty substantial amount, since 12 attack is 12% higher chance that he'll end up getting a Devour, meaning we can actually go and increase that right now to 60 based on what my current stats are. Not 60, my bad, 58. I can't do math in this morning, but yeah, you can end up increasing it by quite an amount if you're lacking in that regard by using those, and that's pretty much all his usefulness. Mostly just an instant kill and gain an absurd amount of stats and for upscaling content. Nothing else really worth crafting as far as mythics are concerned this week. Other than that, As far as weapons, we have ourselves, of course, the Iron Wave. This was the one that you can get through the event, so I advise getting it through Invasions, just by buying gems. You don't really need to buy it here. However, if you're skipping on the Invasion event for whatever reason, it's cheaper to get it this week than later, so you might as well get it now. However, it is advised doing it through gems rather than doing it through Invasions. I mean, do it through Invasions via gems rather than doing it through Soulforge, because if you're already going to be doing Invasions, you pretty much get this for free automatically as you go through it. Other than that, we have Nature Staff. This is a completely useless weapon. However, you'd still want to get it for completionist sake if you want another weapon for the kingdom. And is that it? I thought there would be another one. Wow, Merlantis has very, very few alternative weapons. That is very strange. Would expect them to have a little bit more than that, but yeah, there's this one and the Iron Wave that just came in today. Very odd. But other than that, let's just go over a few teams real quick for some of the weekly stuff that's going on this week. Mostly just going to be going over them. Not really much to show for most of these, other than this one, which you kind of already showed. This was the one I was mentioning earlier. It's the same team I just ran for Invasions, except this is for Mang. All you really do is just switch the Nimue and Mang, and switch the Earth's Fury out for Mang. You can also switch your hero class out for Titan if you want, if you feel like you're dying too quickly, or any other similar hero class that gains Barrier on Brown. But I still use it with Merlantis just because it's 20% stats this week, and it'll just help it out that way. And also you end up getting more synergy for your other team and more stats. Not like it makes too much of a difference, those extra stats, but still it's a pure Merlantis team if you do end up running it with Tidecaller compared to Titan or something. But yeah, this is what you do if you don't have Earth's Fury. Should work out just pretty much just the same. The only difference is you're not gaining attack to everything, you're just getting it all concentrated on your hero instead. Other than that, Fang Moor event, classic. And the main thing that actually makes Irongut not as viable, I would say. Just a few other things too. But Forest Troll double King Gobtruffle with a Doomed Glaive. If you don't have Doomed Glaive, you can end up replacing it out with a Cleanse option, like a Chakra Heart. Or you can end up replacing it out with any other damage that will pretty much fit there. You're allowed to use any color hero weapon, so there's quite a range of options to use. Other than that, if you really don't want to use hero for whatever reason, you can use Mirage Queen, and that will give 50% mana start to your entire team, which is also worth considering if you're not going to be leveling a hero class, or if you don't want to use a better hero class like Warden for Dispel, because Dispel is useful to get rid of Submerge, which hard counters the Gobtruffle's full AoE damage. But yeah, that's been pretty meta for Delves for a while. Still works insanely good. Works for all the way from 20 to 500. One of the only few Delve teams that can consistently work all the way from 20 to 500 while still being decently speedy the entire time. So worth considering. And you got most of that team, of course, from Amethyrax, if you haven't already thrown shards at the portals there. Other than that, here's a more expensive version, using a High King Irongut. And you can end up using a Mountain Crusher, High King Irongut, Zuul'Goth, and Possessed King for the Tuesday faction event. If you don't have a Zuul'Goth, you can end up replacing out for Apothecary. And for the Possessed King, I believe we have access to blue. I believe it's blue-red for the colors. So you could go Mirage Queen, too, at that point if you wanted to. Just so you have a curse option. Mirage Queen has a 4x curse, which as soon as you cast it, so you'll be able to use that with High King Irongut, so you can devour things even if they have immune to devour. Like, for example, this troop has impervious, but if you curse it and then try devouring it, you'll be able to devour it, even though it normally has immune to devour. But curse will bypass all of their immunities for the duration of the curse. Other than that, for Pure Faction this Tuesday, I actually haven't done this Pure Faction. I'm actually going to be doing it this Tuesday. So if you want to see it live, we'll be doing it tomorrow. It's probably going to be a several-hour stream because I do want to get it done to go get that +1 extra magic bonus in about a month from now. But yeah, Chief Dargon double with a Centauri, which ends up creating a bunch of skulls, with a Shaman, which is going to go convert, or it's going to create a bunch of red based on whatever the highest number is on the board. So basically you target whatever the number is, like let's say 10 or 11 or 12 of a certain color that's on the board, and then you get that many red spawn. Is basically how this thing ends up working. It's really bleed based. It's going to be a little bit clunky though. Probably going to require a lot of attack buffing. If nothing else, one nice thing is it does have 50% score reduction, so that combined with a 25% score reduction off of the potions, combined with all the extra stats from the potions, will hopefully make it survivable. There isn't really any kind of heal or anything, but we can hopefully just get skulls at a high enough rate once they're bled, and just skull spam while basically alternating between attack buff, mana accumulation, and then finishing out with skull spam, because by the time we've casted a few of these, they've probably been bled a lot, to the point that all of them are bled, and once all of them are bled, we'll get the full boost ratio, which will end up giving it a gem spawn of 14. And a 14 gem spawn is a pretty decent amount of gem spawn. Not the greatest, not the worst. For 12 mana cost, it's definitely not bad. And he even gets a refresh bleed off of it as well. But yeah, we'll see exactly how Pure Faction goes, but this is my current plan for running level 500 Pure Faction, though of course it works at any level you want to run it at. 100, 150, 200, 500. Those are the main ones you really ever bother going for. Definitely always want to get at least 100 on them, though. And other than that, Tide Caller event. Of course, this is this Thursday. Keep in mind that unlike the Invasion event, which is restricted to Merfolk, this is restricted to both Merfolk and specifically Merfolk from Merlantis. So you have to make sure it's Merlantis there and Merfolk there in order to be able to go and use it for this faction event, or for this class event. And you can easily just use a Mang build for this. And it's kind of similar to what we were already doing, where we're using a skull spam into Mang. Basically the same premise of invasions, it's just with a slightly different restriction to be able to make it work. And that's pretty much the whole game plan for that. And then Bounty Hunter will be pretty much the same thing as always, just running a tank up front and maybe using it with a nice brown, but you might not even need to use a nice brown. We'll actually tweak around to see, but if you want to, you can just use like whatever your best brown mythic is for invasions, or for, names, for Bounty Hunter this Friday, and then just use your brown convert to go and feed it a bunch of mana. But anyways, guys, that's pretty much everything for this week. Hopefully 4.75 patch. We'll probably have some things for Lunar New Year's, given that's Lunar New Year's this year. We already know we're getting Pet this Wednesday. We don't know what else we're getting. And yeah, we're going to have a nice Bounty Hunter that we can go do, coming with a nice Bounty Hunter troop from this Friday. So that's everything that's going on. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will catch all of you guys later. Goodbye, everyone, and thank you so much for watching.